Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you all are doing well. This is Mohammad Badruddin back again with lab number 2 from HTTP Request Smuggling Vulnerability module, and today we are gonna see TE.CL vulnerability. TE stands for Transfer Encoding and CL stands for Content Length. So in series, if you see TE means TE comes first because the front-end server will interpret or consider TE request header, means transfer encoding request header, and the backend server will see the content length but will not see the transfer encoding. So let's see what the lab description is saying. This lab involves a front-end and backend server, and the backend server does not support chunked encoding. To solve the lab, we need to smuggle a request to backend server so that a subsequent request for web root means / triggers a 404 not found response. I already opened up the lab here. This is our lab and this is my burp suite. So everything seems perfect. We get the request here. I'm going to send the request to the repeater, go to the repeater, and I just want to make sure few things. First of all, you see here it's using HTTP version 2. So if you see the same and the repeater or the web application is using HTTP protocol version 2, you need to downgrade it or degrade it to version 1. And how you can do this, in the inspector section, you can see there is a section named as request attribute, and you need to choose HTTP version 1 from here, and you can see it's also changed automatically. The second important part here is when you go and click the repeater tab, you need to make sure the update content length feature is turned off. Otherwise, automatically it will take the correct content length. And sometimes to smuggle the request, you need to increase the size of the content length or decrease the size of the content length as comparison to the actual content what you write. So make sure this feature is turned off. So you need to uncheck this one. If I click again, you can see now it's unchecked. So these two things are more important. Now the HTTP version is 1, and a few things I need to clean from here before writing the smuggled request. So the first thing is I would like to change the request method from get to post. The second thing is I just need these two request header from here. So rest of the request header I'm gonna delete up to user agent, and I also don't need this cookie header. Fine. So just these three headers I took from the request, and the fourth header I will use is transfer encoding. So transfer encoding, and the value of this header is gonna be chunked. Fine. Now the content length will not be interpreted by the front-end server, even though because it is considered by the backend server. So we will see what exactly the content length of the content, we will see that in a minute. But once this request go to the front-end server need to see the chunk. Okay, so here we need to define the chunk hexadecimal value, but we cannot define it now because I don't know what hexadecimal unit I'm gonna write for the smuggled request. So I will write it later. I just write for now hex here. Now I'm gonna say here post, this is a smuggled request, and because I need to see 404 not found response. Okay, 404 not found response. So for that purpose I need to I will try some endpoint that does not exist. So let's say anything or whatever you want, you can type it here. Now HTTP/1.1, make sure the version of HTTP is also 1.1 here. Second thing, you need to provide here content length and content type. So I take it from here, I'm gonna copy it and paste it here. Fine. Also again here content length I will write it later, but before that I'm gonna write here some data. It could be anything. Data is equal to ABC, let's say. and then I'm gonna say 0. So now first thing, I will start from the bottom. It's always better if you start from the bottom because you can easily put the values here. You can just highlight the data here. So data is equal to ABC. You can see in the selection inspector section there is selection, and selection, within the selection there are two values you see. One is out of the parenthesis and the second one is inside the parenthesis. So whatever you see outside of this parenthesis, these are the bytes, and whatever you see within the parenthesis, this is hexadecimal. So the value is 8, which I want to put here, and this is actually outside of the parenthesis, so 8. But I want the backend server read some extra bytes, so instead of 8, basically I will, let's say, put here 20. Okay. Next I need to write here hexadecimal value. So how I will write it, I will highlight the content of this request from request method up to the data, and it's gonna be, you can see here 68. 104, these are the bytes, and this is the hexadecimal value 68. So I will write here 68. Fine. Now there is one more content length here. So if you want to put here the content length, so you need to take it from 68 up to the starting of post, So because the second request will begin from this post. So now you can see here the bytes are 4. If you just highlight 68, it will say 2, but you need to make sure that you take it up from 6 up to the initial of post. So this is 4, and I'm gonna write the content length here 4. Fine. So what happened, once this request will be seen from the front-end server, the front-end server will see this request. It start reading from here. It will say, okay, this is the post request, this is the host, and I need to access the web root, yani /, and then it will come to the content type. It will say, okay, the content type is this. Content length will not be considered by the front-end server because this is TE.CL. So the front-end server will read transfer encoding, that is chunked, and the hexadecimal of it is 68. So the 68 means it will take from here up to here. Okay, this is the second request. This is considered to be the second request. So what this post request will consider, or front-end server will consider, that the request, a complete request, is from here up to here. Okay, and then the backend server will, once the backend server see this request, because backend server will see the content length, so it will see the content length 4, which ends up here up to here, and from here the second request will be seen. And because the backend server will see content length, again it will see the content length is 20, so it will try to read this whole data. Fine. So now let's just send the request, and once we send the request, you can see the first response is 200. If we send this request one more time, you can see this is coming from the backend server, because backend server will separate these two requests and try to process this request. So once the complete request go to the backend server will see the content length, and because it is 4, so the backend server will interpret this request from starting of the post up to the top. This will be considered as the first request, and the front-end backend server will say, okay, I will give you the response of it, and this request will be considered as the second request. Okay, so backend server try to process /anything, but the /anything endpoint does not exist, so it will give us 404 not found response. Fine. One more thing I would like to mention here, if you do not put here this new line sequence or trailing sequence, if you do not mention here, and you send the request. So the first response you will see, fine, read timeout. Why read timeout? Because the content length is 20, it's try to read the data. Fine. If I put here one trailing sequence for the new line and send the request, still again if I try the same. Okay, so just make sure you put two trailing sequence for new line, even though if you put here 3 and send the request, it will say okay, this is the second one. You can see 200. Okay, because you put here content length of 20, so it try to read beyond this. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you understand it. If you like the content, please like, subscribe and share. I'm gonna see you in the next video.